there, YouTube, Mr. Gets a Guy. Welcome to my channel today. Today I'm taking a look at another one on this subject of photography, and this one is comparing digital photography with analog photography or film photography. And you really, as you go into looking at the two, you see that digital photography is a lot different thing than film photography. As in studying film photography and advancing in it, you learn to relate everything to making exposures on film. But in digital photography, you are not very involved in the whole exposure part of it. You push the button, but it's mostly technical stuff, getting everything set up to work so that the camera will make the correct picture. As opposed to with film photography, we just want to control how the camera is going to expose the film, light to the film. And so it's a whole different mindset in that. One of those comes through with, it's ironically, something that I very rarely thought about doing photography on film. But now getting involved in doing photography on a digital camera, one of the biggest things that you're concerned with all the time is losing your batteries. I don't mean disappearing, but losing charge in your batteries. And it's just a video that I made yesterday. It abruptly ended because the battery stopped, and that ended it. So that's where I live. I just put it up that way without the ending on it, because the battery goes all the time. And this is an interesting thing that what I'm going to be talking about here is using film cameras that maybe they have a battery or maybe the battery dies, but many of them you can still take your pictures with them. You can still expose the film, which is what your goal is to do. Now, to get started, behind me on my shelf I have 16 or more cameras, film cameras, and I have 8 Nikon film cameras, and I have one other Nikon. I have a 9th, and that's the D5200 that is recording this video right now. Now, the 8 Nikons that I have will all expose film. They will all take a picture without a battery. But the D5200 that's making this video right now that I'm looking at, it will not. If the battery goes out, it's an expensive paperweight, and that's all it is. So something else for you electronic digital photographers to think about is that in film photography, when you lose the power, it doesn't mean you can't make a picture anymore. You can still expose film just fine, depending on the camera. So I have all 5 manufacturers represented in my showcase there, where I keep my supply of cameras, and I'm going to go through just this basic outlook of by the different manufacturers, which cameras you could use when the batteries die and which ones you can't use when the batteries die. Alright, so let's see, I told you about the 8 Nikons, and each one of them has, 3 of them are mechanical shutters completely, and 5 of them have electronic shutters. All the Nikons have a metal shutter curtains. They're aluminum foil or titanium foil, but all 8 of them have metal shutters, and they have at least one shutter speed setting. these are vertically traveling shutters, so they don't mess with the 1/60th of a second flash sync. The slowest of these flash sync would be 1/90th of a second, and the fastest one would be 1/250th of a second. So you can get you use much higher sync speed for your electronic flash when you have vertical traveling shutters, when you have metal shutter curtains. By comparison, the Canon A series cameras, they all have cloth shutters. They're horizontally traveling, so they max out at 1/60th of a second sync, and none of the A series cameras have mechanical speeds. But that doesn't mean no Canons do, just none of the Canons that I have right now here. We'll come back to Canon further down. The Pentax, I have one Pentax camera right now. I've owned a couple of the 6x7s before, which had 1/30th of a second flash sync, but that was a medium format camera, so it had a great big shutter to work on because of its big format. But currently I just have an MX, which it's kind of interesting that the MX and the ME came out at the same time. The MX is a mechanical shutter with all mechanical shutter speeds, but it has a cloth shutter curtain with sync speed of 1/60th of a second. The ME that I have is an auto exposure camera, all electronic, but it does have a single sync speed of 1/25th of a second because it has a metal shutter. And also it's a vertical travel. So that vertical travel shutter means that it can sync at 1/25th of a second, and that is the mechanical speed on the ME. I don't have an ME currently, but it's kind of interesting how they did that. They put the more mechanical sort of shutter in the electronic controlled one, and then the one that lent more towards electronic in the mechanical camera. So now the next two I'm going to put together because these have similar development of their shutters, but they went in two different directions. That is Olympus and Minolta. I have a couple of Minolta cameras here right now, and I have 4 Olympus cameras. Now, Olympus and Minolta, when they started out with their early cameras, I'm talking the SRTs and the OM1, those cameras were mechanical shutters. They also were horizontal travel, and they were cloth. But you could do all shutter speeds without any battery in either an OM1 or an SRT 201, whatever one you want to talk about. They all have like that. Then early on, both companies developed electronically controlled auto exposure cameras. The Olympus developed the OM1, the OM2 out of the OM1. Minolta developed the XK series, the XE series, and the XD series. That all of those Minoltas were electronic, but they had a mechanical shutter speed. They also had metallic shutter curtains, not metal shutter curtains, and 1/90th or 1/25th of a second flash sync. The Olympus, when they first developed their OM2, it had no mechanical shutter speed. It was all electronic, and it was cloth shutter. Later on, Minolta went into the XG and X700 lines, which were all electronic, no mechanical speed, while Olympus went from the all electric, no mechanical speed OM2 and OM2N to later the OM2 SP and the OM4, which were electronic cameras that had mechanical shutter speeds, still cloth shutters. So they kind of did the opposite on Olympus and Minolta. See if I said that right. Early Minolta auto exposures had electronic, and later ones did not, had mechanical, and the later ones were all electronic, did not have mechanical shutter speeds. And the Olympus, the early electronics, automatic ones, were all electrical, and the later ones introduced a mechanical shutter speed. So they did, the two companies did the opposite. So that covers the 5 companies. Now, as a sideline, I will say this is mainly looking at the consumer market cameras. In the professional line cameras, which was Minolta, kind of the XD11 was kind of one, and Olympus, the OM2N, was pretty much a professional camera. The OM1 was kind of a pro camera too, with the kind of a stripped down one, but they didn't do things like removable pentaprisms on those cameras, so they were kind of like borderline between pro cameras and consumer cameras. But Nikon, Pentax, and Canon all went into the pro level cameras, and then changed. They were mechanical ones at first. Pentax was the K2 DMD and stuff like that. They're early ones. The Canon had the F1, and Nikon came out with the Nikon F, and then the F2, and then in 1980 Nikon moved up to their first auto exposure pro camera, which was the F3. In 1980 also Pentax came out with their LX, and in 1981 Canon came out with their new F1. Now the Nikon, the F3, which everybody thinks of as kind of the penultimate pro camera, was electronic auto exposure, and it had a mechanical sync speed of 1/90th of a second with a titanium horizontal vertical traveling shutter. Titanium shutter curtains. Also in 1980, the LX was introduced with, I think that one had a titanium shutter too, and it had mechanical speeds of 1/125th of a second up to 1/2000th of a second. They, instead of offering one mechanical shutter speed, it made all the fast speeds mechanical. And in 81, when Canon came out with the new F1, they did the same thing. They made the camera basically a match needle camera, but if you had motor drive on it, it would convert to aperture priority, where the camera selected the shutter speed. So you could get that also, but instead of one emergency films or shutter speed, it gave all the high speeds to over 2 mechanical speeds, so you could get all 1/25th on up to 1/2000th of a second with the LX or the new F1 with no batteries. Nikon did one last little trick with their F3, which only had 1 mechanical speed because of this, if you had a battery problem, and that is with the F3, if you added the MD4 motor drive with its full complement of 8 AA batteries to you, and had that connected to your F3, if your batteries died in the camera, or in my case, I never put batteries in my F3, your camera will run on the AA batteries in the motor drive. And that was a unique feature to the Nikon F3, which only showed up again in 1984 when Nikon introduced the FA with motor drive 15, MD15, and like the F3, the FA would run completely without batteries, running on the motor drive batteries if you use the MD15 that connected that. The FA also took the MD11 and MD12 motor drives that went on the FE and FA or FM cameras, but would not power the camera off of the motor drive batteries in those cases. So if you get an FA, you're better off getting the MD15, and so it would cost a little bit more if you could find one than an MD11 or an MD12. Either of those motor drives will run the FA but won't power the batteries for it. So as an extra, I'll put it right here at the end, I'll mention that when they say you have one mechanical sync speed or one mechanical shutter speed available to you, that's not always the case, because actually it's really two speeds that you have available. One is your X sync speed, and the other is a B or bulb setting. And if you have a tripod and you have what's called a cable release, which you don't see on cameras these days, you can set your camera to bulb, and you can do 1/15 of a second, 1/8 of a second, 1/4 of a second, half second, just by timing it yourself with your cable release. So that gives you some more than just one shutter speed that's available to you. And also, you can use your 1/60th more if you have a neutral density filter because you only have limited f-stops that you can use, and sometimes it's going to be too bright for what your available f-stop is. So I hope that is helpful to you. I'm going to get going here, and thank you for watching. Give me a like and a subscribe. I need a few more subscribers here to monetize the channel, and I can see some red light flashing that my battery is about to go on my electronic digital camera. So until next time, this is Mr. Gipton Guy, and I'm out of here.